Ain't no thing. Check it, bleed. Bro was on. Didn't trip. But the folks was freaking, man. Hey, the pilots were laid to the bone, home. So blood hammering out and jam, Jim. Shit. Tighten that bad sucker side the runway like a mother.
The biggest hurdle the Kamala Harris campaign has to overcome is her past, her liberal, leftist, socialist, Marxist past. And of course, she was recognized as being the most leftist senator when she was actually in the Senate before she was chosen by Joe Biden for her skin color and gender. So of course, if the American public can just be made aware of her previous positions, they'll recognize she's either a huge liar, a huge flip-flopper, or she's the worst possible person you could have becoming president of this nation. Now, what we're going to see today is Vivek Ramaswamy cleaning house and taking names over on CNN when we're discussing this exact same topic. So let's go ahead and jump into the clips.
So the campaign memo also makes clear that part of the strategy right now is to continue to try to define Kamala Harris as extreme and radical. If you take a look inside this new polling from CNN of likely voters in these battleground states, though, what likely voters are saying is that is not yet working. Showing the way we see it, the way the numbers show it is showing voters largely describe Harris's views and policies as mainstream and Trump's as too extreme across these states. About half in each state saying Trump's views and policies are so extreme they pose a threat to the country, while around 4 in 10 say the same about Harris's position. A lot of numbers, but the point being is if voters don't agree with the extreme narrative against Trump, do you think Team Trump should be shifting now against Harris? Sorry.
I actually disagree. I respectfully disagree with your characterization there in one important way, which is that voters have not yet been exposed, principally via the media, to what Kamala Harris's past positions actually are. I don't blame the voters. They've been served up a new version of Kamala Harris where she is running to the center on economic and social policies. But the reality is, if we're able to use Kamala Harris's own words against her, as I believe we should, she ran for president favoring an tax on unrealized capital gains, favoring an abolition, her words, to abolish private health insurance, a ban on fracking, bans on offshore drilling. These are the kinds of policies that absolutely are not mainstream for most Americans. And this is where I do think the debate will be useful. I do think that greater media scrutiny of Kamala Harris, hopefully with more sit-down interviews than we've had so far, will be helpful. Say what you will, you may or may not agree with Donald Trump. He and J.D. Vance have sat for tens of interviews, as have other members of the campaign and surrogate team. The reality is we haven't seen the same from Kamala Harris. I do expect that's going to change in the next couple of months, and I believe voters are going to be very well informed heading into November.
Exactly. That is the big issue. Voters basically are uninformed about Kamala Harris's shady past, all right? And the media is not going to point that out because they know that leftists don't win elections. America doesn't like socialist, communist values being shoved down their throats, which is why they have to keep all of this stuff a secret. Of course, the problem is this is actually kind of an open secret because we recently just had the Kamala Harris campaign coming out and saying, hey, here's all the policies that Kamala stands for now. But there is a big one, right? A huge recent flip-flop is that Kamala Harris is coming out and says, hey, she does not support an electric vehicle mandate, despite the fact that in 2019, she actually co-sponsored a bill to mandate electric vehicles. So she's coming out against her own previous stances once again, which is what the left always does. And will the media actually report this? No, it's a byline on a website that nobody visits except for me to make videos. You're not going to hear about this on CNN. You're not going to hear about this on MSNBC, unless, of course, you have people like Vivek coming out and talking about it. This lady has been on both sides of every issue now, right? So all the policies she used to endorse that were too extreme for America, like bans on fracking and wide open borders, have been replaced with things that are even worse, like unrealized capital gains taxes, price setting. These are the ideas that are supposedly mainstream, but people just don't know about it. And as soon as they're educated, they're going to turn on her quick, which we're actually seeing already in the polls.
Vivek, but on banning private health insurance, she has said she does not believe that, and she does not believe that now. On banning fracking, she has made clear, and she did in the interview with Dana Bash, that she does not support that anymore. If evolving, or call it what you want, flip-flopping, you can call it what you want. But one second.
I can't leave that hanging. I can't leave that hanging on policy, if I may.
I understand, but I'm going to ask the question, then you can totally answer. She said very clearly that now is those are not her positions. If evolving on an issue, if evolving on a position, you can even call it flip-flopping on an issue. If that is now not allowed, if that should be, the death knell to a campaign, Donald Trump's got issues there.
So look, the reality is Donald Trump's been clear about his policy positions. With Kamala Harris, I want to be specific about this, though. Actions speak louder than words. When you brought up some claims about Kamala Harris. I want to finish that discussion. She said she didn't favor a ban on fracking now. The reality is she was one of the strongest proponents of that ban, so much so that when she was in California, she sued the Obama administration over granting fracking permits. She didn't just favor the abolition of private health insurance. She was a co-sponsor of the bill with Bernie Sanders as a U.S. Senator for Medicare for All for Americans. The reality is, when you think about the Green New Deal, she was the chief proponent, not just as a co-sponsor of the legislation, but going further and saying she would end the filibuster in the Senate to ram that through. So the reality is she can say what she wants to say now. Those are actions she has taken. Is someone allowed to evolve? Of course they are, but she deserves to explain exactly why she's changed those positions, exactly what her position is. If it's not a ban on fracking, what exactly is it? What exactly is her healthcare plan if she no longer favors abolishing private health insurance, which just 4 short years ago when she ran for president, she did? And that's the kind of scrutiny that's been missing. I think Donald Trump has received plenty of scrutiny, and I give credit to him for sitting for hostile interviews that Kamala Harris has not. But the American people and the American electorate deserve a rich policy debate that they have not had with Kamala.
And it gets to be, I guess it will be for the voters to decide how long of kind of an expiration date there is on when something is still your position, or if you believe them now on what they're saying on their position. Voters get to decide. She said that her position has evolved on that. Is it okay for candidates to evolve on a position over a period of years?
I think it's perfectly acceptable. I think most people need to rethink their positions over time as facts change. But they deserve to explain to the people clearly what she has failed to do. And it's not just a change in position. These are hard positions on which she has actually taken policy action, both as a vice president, an attorney general, and a U.S. senator. And simply saying she doesn't believe that anymore is not a sufficient explanation on core issues that affect costs for Americans, health care for Americans, taxation for Americans, including taxes on unrealized gains, on which she has not yet changed her position. That, I think, is a devastating economic policy that's among those she needs to explain, and she hasn't done it.
It's hilarious how they always try to say, oh, it's just an evolving position, right? She's changing her mind. She's getting more information. However, as I already mentioned, the left always comes to the center whenever they're running for office. Just look at Joe Biden, for example, right? He was supposed to be the adult in the room, the return to normalcy. And yet, after he was elected, he has had one of the most left-leaning administrations, one of the most authoritarian administrations we have ever seen in this country. Look at all of the policies he actually endorsed, embracing transgenderism and everything else, all right? That is what the leftists always give you. So Kamala Harris can say whatever the crap she wants to now. It's up to us to educate the public at large that she does not mean it. She's already let all of her values, all of her views be known. But now that the spotlight's on her, she has to scurry back underneath that centrist blanket so she can hopefully get elected. I have my fingers crossed that's not going to happen.
Candidates seem to be struggling on. Donald Trump continues to be struggling on stating a clear position on abortion and reproductive rights. Last week, he was asked his position on a Florida ballot initiative he will be voting on to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. And the way he responded to the question was 6 weeks is too short. I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. The next day, he said that he will then, though, support the 6-week ban. Why is he struggling to state a clear position on abortion then?
So again, I respectfully disagree with your characterization there about him struggling to state a position. The truth of the matter is Donald Trump has been crystal clear that, first of all, this is an issue for the states.
And that is an issue that he's going to be voting on in the state of Florida, right?
Well, first of all, in his capacity for running for U.S. president, what he's running for Kamala Harris against, he has been clear that he is against a federal ban on abortion. Now, on the Florida bill, which I want to address as well, there is a difference between being opposed to a 6-week ban, which he's been consistent on, both during the campaign when I ran against him, as well as throughout, that he's against a 6-week ban. That is different than what this ballot measure accomplishes. And I know you know that, Kate. This ballot measure, through its vague crafting, would allow abortions far after 6 weeks, arguably under the interpretation of some legal scholars, all the way up to the point of birth. He's against that, and that's been a consistent position as well. So I do think this attempt by Democrats and its politics, so you'd expect it, to conflate an opposition to a 6-week ban with somehow being in favor of a ballot measure that actually would allow for far more than that, is, I think, sophistry. And the job of voters, I hope they do it, is to see through that, even if it's served up to the media. You can't conflate those two things, and I don't think that's an inconsistency, with all due respect.
Things you also can't conflate is on the issue of, and I've heard this time and again, of accusing, of saying that Democrats, and putting this on Kamala Harris, is, saying that they're going to be able to, as you mentioned, up to the point of birth or execute a baby after birth. That you do agree that that is illegal in all states.
That is
not an issue.
Is and should be illegal, except for when you look at the vaguely drafted statutes that are now expanding in these ballot measures. And I think that's the debate we ought to be having in this country, is an honest debate at the state level. And where I give Donald Trump a lot of credit, this was my position during the presidential campaign as well, is that this is an issue for the states in a post-Dobbs world. I think Roe was correctly overturned. I think most Republicans agree on that. This is now an issue for the states. And I know that Democrats want to make this a core issue, but the reality is it's not a presidential issue anymore. It belongs to the states. Kamala Harris has wrongly characterized and wrongfully stated, I think in this case I'd call it an outright lie, saying Donald Trump would sign a federal abortion ban when he's been clear that he's against a federal position on this issue. And I think voters deserve that kind of clarity.
So this is why it's so important to actually discuss what's in these bills, because how many of these bills actually have those little poison pills that if you actually vote for it or against it, they try to get you either way, okay? Donald Trump has made himself perfectly clear on this issue. He thinks it's a states' rights issue, and I give him full credit for overturning Roe v. Wade, and he also believes in the exceptions, incest, rape, life of the mother, right? Those are perfectly reasonable stances to have. However, I do want to point out the leftists do advocate abortion up until the moment of birth, and also in the case of botched abortions, they'll actually let the child die on the table without trying to save its life. So those are all very extreme positions that leftists actually advocate for. Like, look at New York's current abortion law and tell me it is not extreme. So either way, I love having Vivek come out and point all of this stuff out very clearly and concisely to the talking heads at CNN, who are basically just mouthpieces for the Harris campaign at this point. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.